practice. I think technologists left to their own want to just add new capability right up until the robot goes to the starting line. And we were big on having the code freeze and saying, okay, this is it. This is what we've got. Now it's time to practice with it, to understand what it can do, and to make operating this robot second nature. Our technical approach had a few elements. The first was the robot itself. We wanted a robot that would be human informed, so it could go in all the places humans went and do the things humans did, but we didn't like the idea of walking and needing to balance. So we built Chimp, and Chimp has arms and hands like any other humanoid, but Chimp doesn't walk, Chimp rolls around, either in an upright position or, in the case of extreme terrain, by dropping down on all four and rolling on 4 tracks like a tank. A second component was to use an immersive user interface. What we wanted to do was equip the robot with sensors so we could build an accurate model of the robot's environment and measure the robot's position in the environment and ship that back to the operators so they could understand what was happening and what the robot was doing. And then the third element was to use a sliding autonomy approach. The idea is to control the robot at multiple levels. If the task is well understood, like many of the tasks we needed to do for the challenge, the operator would interact with the robot at a high level by saying things like, grab this drill, turn this valve, open this door. If the tasks were less well understood, then the operator could drop down to a lower level, for instance, to workspace control by telling the robot to move its hand into a particular location to do something. And finally, at the lowest level, the operators could move individual joints. If, for instance, the elbow is stuck up against something, the elbow could be moved out of the way. So at the top of the hierarchy, you have fastest operation, but also limited to the tasks that the robot knows about. At the bottom, you can do anything, but it could take a lot of time. This is Chimp. Chimp is a big robot, 443 pounds. It consists of over 10,000 parts. Most of those parts are custom. It was designed and built at NREC in 1 year's time. As you can see, it has arms and has hands and rolls around on tracks. It is equipped in the head with 2 types of sensors. It has laser rangefinders, so it can build a 3-dimensional model of the environment. It also has stereo cameras and a panamorphic camera, so that it can paint that model with image data. Chimp is equipped with quad-core i7 processors to crunch the data. The robot itself has many degrees of freedom, 39 degrees of freedom, actually. And the key component in the robot is the drive joint, or the nugget, as we call them. Those are the gray cylinders. And these are actuators that are very high torque to mass. So Chimp can curl 300 pounds. The joints are continuously rotating, if that's kinetically possible for the joint. They have 18-bit encoders for very precise measurement of their angle. They have brakes, so when a chimp joint is not being used, it's not drawing any power, and it just freezes in position. And finally, they have clutches, so that if the joint is over torqued rather than brake, it will just slip. These drive joints allow Chimp to do all the things that it can do. After the trials, we did make some additional improvements to the robot. The first thing we did was made sure we were competition compliant, so we put on the radios, or the wireless and the e-stop radios. Also put a battery in the robot so we could run without tether. And then we focused on protection. So we put a head cage on Chimp that we used when Chimp fell in the first day of the competition. We also strengthened the body panels, and then we focused on making Chimp stronger. So we changed things out so we had more torque in the tracks. We replaced the actuators in the thighs with larger ones, strengthened the brakes in the knees. So this was all also that Chimp could do more, and so that we would be less likely, for instance, to have a clutch slip in certain situations. This shows you Chimp's software architecture. So the boxes in blue are software that runs at the operator control station, and the boxes that are tan or maybe yellow show software that runs on the robot. The sensors are on the robot, so it collects that data, and it uses it to build this three-dimensional model of the environment that it ships off to the operators. It also uses sensors like cameras for visual odometry, and then later on LiDAR for the same thing. It also integrates kinematic odometry in order for Chimp to track its location relative to the environment, and ships that off to the operators as well. So then the operators have this model of the environment. They know where Chimp is in the environment. They can rotate it around and look at it from different angles to figure out what's going on. And then they task Chimp to do things. Grab this drill, turn this valve. Chimp produces plans for how it's going to move its arms and move its grippers. The operator can preview those to see what will happen, to make sure they're okay. And if it checks out, pass them along to the robot for execution. We made a number of software improvements post-trials. In fact, that was the primary focus of the whole phase. The first thing we needed to do was complete the functionality. We went to the trials really prepared to do just the manipulation tasks. We had minimal mobility capability. So we programmed the machine to handle extreme terrain, to remove debris, to climb ladders and stairs, and to drive the vehicle and do egress. And that consumed a big part of the phase for us. We also knew that we would have to go faster, and our machine would need to be more reliable when performing the task. So we accomplished that in a number of ways. The first was we made the machine more autonomous. We added object recognition based on the LiDAR. So we had templates for the various shapes. We could match them to the data to localize the objects. We sped up our planners so we could get a result faster and not waste time there. We had a whole series of scripted motions and ability to interpolate between postures. And these were a set of tools that the operator could use to, for instance, have the machine shift left or right to achieve alignment with the door. We also developed a friendlier SES that had more useful features and graphical aids for the operators. We also developed a high-frequency robot telemetry that really used minimal bandwidth. Even though inside the degraded comms were 9600 baud, we were still able to ship the robot's position over that link back to the operators and could send commands from the operators out to the robot. And so provided we had a nice model of the environment, and provided we knew where the robot was, and provided there wasn't anything else moving in the environment, between the 30-second bursts of data, we could fairly reliably teleoperate the robot over this limited link. We also added some automatic safeguarding, so we had protections for extreme roll and pitch, for high torque, conditions like that that would automatically stop the robot until the operator could attend to it. And then finally, we added automatic fall recovery, and we needed to use that. Now I'm going to go through the tasks and talk about some of the technologies that we used for each. So for the vehicle task, we use the LiDARs on the robot to build a 3D model around the vehicle as the operator drives. You can see the ground is shown in blue, and the obstacles are shown in green. And the operator is able to drive the vehicle like a vehicle, so can press the throttle and turn the steering wheel. And basically does this using a plan view, so a view from above, so you can see where the vehicle is, and you can see where the obstacles are, and make sure that you can steer around them without collision. This shows a run from a camera mounted on the vehicle. If you didn't notice it during the challenge, we actually steer the vehicle by using one of the tracks in the arm. So this avoids the need to grab the steering wheel with the gripper, and are able to detect these barrels and cones and drive through this course. We set up a lot more complicated driving courses than the ones we actually faced here at the challenge. Vehicle egress. This one's always a crowd pleaser. It's actually a set of scripted motions that Chimp goes through in order to get out of the vehicle. It needs to rotate in its seat and get its leg tracks down on the ground and support itself with its arms, and actually drive down the side of the vehicle a little bit so that it can drop its leg tracks onto the ground. Then when it's on the ground, its knees are actually reversed. So it has to do this funky maneuver where it goes down and reverses its knees and gets back to its standard two-limb mode. So it is a bunch of scripted motions, but the autonomy keeps an eye on what's happening and is looking at things like joint torques and clutches slipping and posture being in the wrong place and orientations being wrong, and stops the script if something bad is happening, so the operators can intervene and make adjustments. Opening doors. Chimp uses its LiDAR sensors in order to detect the door. And then it has a repertoire of motions that can be used to open a door, depending on the type of lever that's on the door, the placement of the lever on the door, depending on which side it is. And all of these can be invoked to have Chimp press the lever down in this case, and then push the door open and drive through. It raises its arm that way so that it can tuck it in a bit and get through the door without colliding with either side. Turning valves. This was usually pretty quick work for Chimp. We do have perception software, LiDAR based, that detects the valve, and then the operator selects a strategy, whether to insert the gripper inside of the ring, or to grab it on the outside, or to grab part of the ring and turn it. So the operator selects the strategy and then tells Chimp to execute it. and this one usually goes fairly quickly. Wall cutting. So this is one of the more complicated tasks because it has so many steps. And we have a semi-autonomous agent that works with the operators to do each step. We do use LiDAR-based perception to recognize the drill, to localize it and get the orientation. The operator can select ways to grab the drill, and we also added the capability where, as we're reaching for it, we can monitor the forces to make sure that we're not knocking the drill over as we put the fingers around it. We look at the drill so that we can see if it's on when we press the trigger. We take a picture and look at the light. And then the operator has a texture mapped model of the wall and can see where the circle is and draws the square to be cut with a robot, and then Chimp will automatically cut that shape. The robot is quite strong. We have cut holes with the drill off. So mobility was a big design driver for Chimp. We wanted to be able to go over all sorts of uneven terrain, and then ironically enough, didn't do any of this driving at the finals. So the idea is the robot goes down on all four limbs, all four tracks. It has 4 points of contact below the center of gravity, and drives over a pile of cinder blocks in this case. What we did to improve this capability was as the machine drives over the blocks, sometimes limbs will come up, and we have an adaptable suspension where the robot automatically detects this condition and puts the tracks down so it maintains 4 points of contact and the forces are balanced. The operator then drives Chimp like a car actually over the pile, just setting the pitch of the tracks based on the size of the pile, and then can steer it as it moves over the pile. Dealing with debris. So you can pick up the debris and move it out of the way, but that's slow. So all of the robots that did this instead just plow through it. And when you're 443 pounds, you should be able to plow through it. So for us, it was a matter of making sure the debris didn't get tangled up with the robot, that we didn't roll over it with the tracks when we were in upright two-limb mode. So we had a whole bunch of postures, 2 and 4 limb, where we're basically using the arms and the grippers to push the stuff out of the way and make sure it didn't get underneath the robot. And then we also had clearing motions where, as we came out the back, we could have the arms sweep one way or another just to try to clear the stuff out of the robot's path as it went forward. Climbing stairs. We prepared for a full range of stair types based on the rise and the run. So if the stairs are not very steep, Chimp can actually drive up the edges of the steps with its 4 tracks, and that's a very quick way to go up a flight of stairs. For steeper stairs, Chimp uses a ratcheting motion where it uses its arm tracks to pull up its leg tracks, and then vice versa, and kind of inchworms its way up the stairs. For the set of stairs at the challenge, it really ratchets itself up because it doesn't have much room at the top on the platform. So you get to see a little bit of both, a little bit of driving up the steps and then a ratcheting motion near the end. All right, fall recovery. So I noticed that after Chimp fell, DARPA played the video of me saying our robot doesn't fall. I'd like to know who did that before I leave here. So we're designed not to fall, but we were prepared in the event that we did. So we used gazebo to investigate lots of ways for Chimp to get up when it falls. That's a good way to do it so you don't damage your robot. We did do it for real on mats. And the idea is you want to get rolled over, get on your tracks. We call it Superman mode, where it has its arms out and its legs out straight and on its tracks, and then it's able to stand up. So of course we did fall, and we fell in a bad place where we were partially in the doorway, and the team effectively used these recovery mechanisms to get back up. Okay, last slide. Another big part of how we did it is sponsorship. So we're very thankful for the funds we received from DARPA. They were the lion's share of the funding, but we also had many sponsors, and in some cases they gave us funding. In other cases they gave us components that went into the robot, and I think this is a fantastic thing. It gave us more resources, and it exposed industry to the technology that we were developing at Emory. So that's how we did it.